Although when I see an unironic cowboy hat in the wild, I also look at that person funny, and it's neither of those things. It's just like, do you think that hat looks good? Why are we wearing a cowboy hat? There are no cows here. So it's definitely judgment, but it's not political judgment. It's just more like, why are you wearing that hat?
That's probably both the best version and the most damning because it's an actual fashion insight as opposed to some sort of weird exegesis that the person has done. But the older I get, Jen, the more comfortable I am with the fact that I am kind of an action figure of a man. Like I am a cartoon character on some deep fundamental level, and I'm okay with that. I exist to some extent for the benefit and amusement of the people around me, and that involves leaning into tropes.
I mean, that checks out. We call you a cartoon character behind your back.
Oh, I called it to him to his face.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
There was
why I feel comfortable saying it to him now.
Yeah. No, there was this great moment 2 years ago, or not 2 years ago, excuse me, two elections ago, when Justin and I were in New Hampshire, our friendship newly forged, and I had rented a car and the battery died, and I called the car company and they went, no problem. Leave your car in the parking lot of the hotel and we'll just come pick it up. You just need to leave the keys with the front desk. So I came in and went, hello, I'm Andrew Heaton, room 332. I need to leave my keys with you and they're going to drop off keys for you for me. And I'll pick them up later. And the person just, her jaw dropped. She stared at me and I went, oh, I'm sorry. Did I say something offensive? And she shook her head and I went, is it because I'm a cartoon character? And she just burst out laughing. And I was like, aha, that's it. All right, I'm okay with this.
I feel like this is like your own Who Framed Roger Rabbit world of a civil rights story. Like this is a barrier being broken down between toon and human.
Yeah.
You know what? I got so angry the other day. I'm excited to be back in an office part-time. And the other night I had trouble falling asleep. Okay. All right. So I went on Vistaprint, which is a printing service, and I drew up plans for 50 brochures entitled Andrew Heaton and You, A Guide to the Inevitable, which I was going to put in the Reason office. And it was going to be an FAQ section of like, Heaton said a joke that made me feel uncomfortable. Answer. Many underhumans don't understand Heaton's sense of humor. Just ask him to explain the joke to you. Like just a series of really egotistical, over-the-top stuff. And they wouldn't let me print it. I got a thing a couple of days later that went, this violates copyright law. And I was like, this is an inter-office joke. Vistaprint. So if you all know a more funny printing service that I can make fake brochures for.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you use like Mickey Mouse on it? Like
it had the R for reason. I think that's it. Or some dumbass read it and literally thought my hilarious section on the history of the floor fire marshal dating back to 1962 to keep fire-related deaths to a minimum was actually like misinformation or some shit.
I don't think actual people read it. I think it's mostly just like a computer.
Do you suppose if I email them and go, this is for a hilarious inter-office brochure-related joke, that there's a box for that they could click to let them.
Do you have a Reason email?
Yeah.
Then I would say email them with your Reason email and say, hi, this is for an inner office thing. Can you
That's a good idea.
Print it for me?
Yeah.
Dingbats.
The other thing I can do, but it's less
geniuses. Start out your email with that.
I really like subtle jokes because if you put that up in the kitchen in a little brochure thing, people won't even look at it because I made it intentionally look like the kind of bland HR bullshit that you see, right? The more blunt thing I'm planning to do is buy a ghillie suit and just stand at it in the corner, because that would be really over the top, but just more overt. I'm a comic of nuance.
Heaton, let me just tell you this. You are a very lovable person, and it's a very, very good thing because the behavior you've just described is intolerable.
Yeah, it's insane.
Intolerable. Like I would, if I worked at an office and shit like that happened regularly, I would quit. I would quit immediately. Yeah. And everyone I told why I quit would agree with me. They would all say, thank God you left there. That person sounds like a monster. But you're so lovable that you wind up getting away with it.
Yeah, you pull it off.
Thanks.
I'm just curious, like, this is what you do in your free time. Do you ever just do nothing?
No.
Just sit there and chill.
You know what? Truthfully, I've been exhausted the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I think it's from all the election stuff, not even including my hilarious inter-office humor, the election and just all the tiny little mental transactions you do when you move. Like when I go to the grocery store, I don't know where the grape nuts are, and other very popular cereal items that everybody knows and loves, like grape nuts. I have to go find them now, and like that's really adding up. And this last weekend, I had like told myself, Heaton, you're going to just lay down and not do anything for at least 5 hours. And I couldn't even do that. I laid down for like maybe an hour and a half and watched some 30 Rock. But then I got up and worked on the camper and stuff like that. I'm real bad at relaxing. I'm not good at it.
I don't think relaxing is good for you.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That's a very Justin thing to say.
Yeah, no, I think it's over. That big relax has poisoned our brains to think that sitting around and doing nothing is better than doing things. And I just think doing things is better.
Oh, you are wrong. I'm going to Hawaii for 12 days where I have nothing planned, and I am so excited about it.
And yet we've turned further away from God's love, and we see the result in our poisoned society.
I think our society needs more chilling.
Nah.
We're a little
I think I'm with Justin on this one. I'm going to be dead for an awful long time. So I gotta get all the shit done now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the amount that you guys are pushing yourselves, you're going to be dead a whole lot sooner than me.
Hell no. I'm healthy like a horse.
Are you?
God, this is going to be funny when I die in 2 months.
When your heart attack hits you at 45.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'm
chat.
The only place I can really relax, sleeper trains and camping. It's one of the reasons I truly like camping is that I do disassociate and my sense of self becomes very tiny, and I just don't care about email at all. And so like I'm planning to go camping for Thanksgiving. I've already had several lovely people go, well, you don't have to go camping. You can come to our dinner. And I'm like, I agree. I don't have to go camping. I get to go camping. I'm looking forward to going camping. My dog and I are going to go out. It's going to be nice and cool. We're going to go on hikes, fight with a bobcat, mate with a bear. It'll be good.
Yeah, that is relaxing. You do camp a lot. So
that's also,
healthy.
It is a cry for help.
It is not a cry,
it's
for,
a cry
help.
for help.
You workaholic psycho.
No, this is me wanting him to connect with people. He should take the people up on his offer and go camping on any day other than the American Day of Fellowship. I think that's literally, you can do it any other day. You work for yourself. You can go out camping and whenever you want. It's going to be cool and crisp for every day around that. You should probably carve out, I don't know, 3 hours for the time when people, especially when going to a new area, you can have a moment where you can connect with people.
But it's a twofer because he misses Thanksgiving, but also Black Friday, which is the worst day of American.
Black Friday's not even a thing anymore.
Oh, please. It sure is. Ask all the people that are going to be lining up in the middle of the night at Walmart for their cheap TVs.
I think you are stuck in the aughts. I don't know if that happens the same way anymore.
Okay.
We'll see.
People are still lining up in the middle of the night.
I'm not saying that there aren't psychos out there that are doing it. I just don't think that it's the same trampling on each other for a $200 toshiba.
Isn't it Black Thursday now where everybody does stuff online? There's lots of electronic deals and things.
That's Cyber Monday.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. That's Thanksgiving. Black Thursday is
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
But it was sneaking into Thanksgiving, and I'm glad that there seems to be enough of a backlash about that. We've talked about it on this show where they were opening the doors at 6 p.m. for the Black Friday sales and all that shit. Like, I'm glad that there's a movement away from that we can have Thanksgiving and then Black Friday. But if I had to sacrifice Thanksgiving to have Black Friday not exist, I'd have to think about it because I think it's the ugliest day in American culture.
Yeah. I mean, sure. All right.
So go camping.
What? Again, he can go camping on Black Friday.
I'm supportive of all of his decisions.
I know. See, you're the enabler.
That's
you're the
okay.
enabler.
I will enable his camping.
Justin, I'm open to your position that I should connect with more people. However, it is going to get much colder very soon. And so I feel like the window is closing for me to do fall camping before it becomes prohibitively cold.
Look, again, I've barred myself from having any discussions with you about temperature because they are not rational, but
good call. Good call.
No, I think that you are free. You are an adult. You are free to do whatever you want. And I hope you have a very pleasant Thanksgiving out.
It'll be great either way. Thank you very much. And I'm going to bring the Starlink if I go, so I'll be able to like call my family and stuff. So it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever you do out there, just getting buck naked and drawing sacred symbols in the leaves and just screaming primally. But you always return with a smile on your face. So whatever bizarre Zoroastrian rituals you perform out there, it seems to fill your cup. So
the Andrew Heaton Project.
Yeah, exactly. You just, Heaton would be somebody that if he were a werewolf, no one would know, because he's just like, once a month I need to go camping. It doesn't matter if it falls during Thanksgiving. And then eventually we would realize in the end of the first act, wait a minute, it was always during a full moon.
Yeah. And he does do the werewolf goodbye, where it's like, you'll be talking to him. He's, I gotta go, runs out the door. And it's like, the sun's setting. I'm about to be a wolf.
Because he just looked at his palm and he saw a one claw popping out and he's just like, gotta go.
Yeah, it's time.
I'm going to keep that, because there's the Irish goodbye where you just sneak out, right? There's what I used to call the Scottish goodbye, which is where you come up and go, I have to leave, I'm very drunk. And then the werewolf goodbye is where you just shout it and flee. I like that. I'm keeping, thank you, Jen. TM, Jen Briney, werewolf goodbye.
I like it.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And from somewhere in Virginia,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong. On this edition of the program, we are going to discuss Russia declaring that nuclear weapons are on the table, and whether or not Blue Sky is going to topple the micro blogging world as it is surging on the app stores. That and your email. We are going to talk in the emails a little bit about the cable news discussion we had, but we do have news on that front. Breaking this morning, Comcast announcing that it is going to spin out all of their cable channels, including USA, Sci-Fi, and MSNBC. Not Bravo. Bravo stays. Bravo stays with the main with the main ship, aka Bravo's profitable.
Yeah.
But everything else is getting spun out, and so now there's a lot of questions about whether or not all these are essentially being spun out because they are money sponges and they are just going to be left on unattended to die slowly. But in the immediate offing, MSNBC might have to divest itself from the name NBC because it is no longer a part of the NBC newsroom. CNBC facing a similar issue, but there's a lot of questions on whether or not they will be able to retain that branding.
Interesting.
Can we brainstorm names for a new MSNBC?
I mean, I liked MSDNC. I think it's perfect.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, oh gosh, what would it be, like Harpy TV or something like that? Like I want to
Harpy TV.
Oh my God.
Harpy TV. Yeah. And then you could call it the Harp.
Based on how much I watched of it, I would call it Honey Love Bras Black Friday sale prices available now, because that's the only ad they run on that channel. It is over and over. Bra company Honey Love. I can recite the shot selection of all the women that are dancing around advertising that there's no back fat with a Honey Love bra.
Remember in the early days of podcasting where MeUndies was advertising everywhere?
Oh, yeah.
It seems like
MeUndies
that's the
and
regression.
Casper mattresses.
Well, I mean, and real heads remember Adam and Eve back when podcasting was an untested landscape. Pornography always finds
and the fleshlight.
Flashlight too. But there's a lot of stuff that pops up there. But yeah, Adam and Eve was very, very, very big.
But when you have one company that's really obscure like that, that's allowed to dominate your ad time, it's not good for the state of your business.
No, when it's that plus PSAs, it was like Honey Love ads, ACLU ads, menopause ads.
That's revealing.
And and then other old people stuff. But it's not a young environment there on the soon to be possibly renamed MSNBC, but also I got real questions on whether or not that network is going to survive until the next presidential election.
Well,
I think
the resistance returns, so we'll see if their audience does too.
The early returns are in. They haven't.
Yeah.
the ratings have continued to crater. Joe and Mika bent the knee. Did you see that?
I did, and I'm not surprised at all. They are tools.
They also live in Palm Beach now. So if all their friends want to go to Mar-a-Lago, then they're just going to be like, oh, okay. Well, there's only so many dinners we can have alone in Meisner Park.
Yeah.
A journalist friend sent me part of that Mika and Joe bending the knee bit. So I've not actually watched it, but the thing that she was amazed by was that they had to spend so much time apologizing to their audience for why they would deign to talk to the president-elect. And my thought would be, because you're fucking journalists. Like, I don't need, if Trump wanted to come on the political orphanage, I wouldn't have a 15-minute diatribe about, like, I really debated whether or not to talk to this very important person who's at the center of the news cycle. But that they were doing that. They were apologizing for why they would even.
No, they were explaining what it was. And also, it's not like Trump is on the show. They went to go visit Trump and essentially were apologizing for becoming friends with him personally again, which they were before he was elected president. And
wait, does that mean Whoopi Goldberg will be friends with him again?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how far the vibe shift goes. But, we don't have that any of these in here. But Trump's popular. Trump's more popular in the approval ratings than he has ever been in his history as a presidential candidate or a president. He was +3 today with YouGov, which is a harsher barometer, but he's above water right now. He's popular. So is JD Vance. JD Vance is more popular than he is. Kamala Harris -7, Joe Biden -14. But the vibe shift, and we'll talk about that in the Patreon episode. But the vibe shift is real.
Yeah,
people are looking at this in a way that is far different than the post 2016 version, where it was, we must fight.
Oh yeah. Like, I don't think the inauguration is going to be met with 3 million women in pussy hats this time. Like, it's just not. And I think that's for the better. I don't know. Like you said, this is going to be the Patreon topic, but I'm feeling the vibe shift, and I think it could be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Russia. Let's talk about bad things.
Yes.
Vladimir Putin has revised Russia's nuclear doctrine, threatening to use nuclear weapons if Ukraine attacks Russian territory with long-range Western missiles. By the way, that happened. They did. Ukraine did attack Russia with long-range Western missiles. The move follows the U.S. approval of the ATACMS rockets for Ukraine. That ATACMS.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Rockets for Ukraine's, marking a significant escalation of the war. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed Russia's views that such missiles as aggression from a nuclear-backed state potentially would justify nuclear retaliation. Russian propagandists have issued warnings targeting the U.S., UK, France, and framing the conflict as a direct confrontation with NATO. The updated policy comes as Ukraine employs the missiles to counter Russia's intensified attacks, significantly raising the stakes in a war that passed its 1,000-day mark this week. Jen, are we on the brink of nuclear war, or is this bluster from Moscow?
So I don't think that we're on the brink of nuclear war just yet, while this is definitely an escalation. Let me just get this out of the way. I do think that when the history books are written, Joe Biden is going to be considered one of the most reckless, strategically incompetent foreign policy presidents of American history. Because when he took office, we were not involved in these two wars that have the World War III potential. And now we very much are. And on his way out the door, he's escalating this. So it's like, that's a very real critique. And Vladimir Putin has verbally responded. But I went and looked at what he actually said, and it's really no different than what he's been saying the whole time. So he was saying that this is an escalation. His threat is to arm our adversaries to enable them to hit our military, which is something he's already doing, but he has threatened to give them long-range missiles. And they changed their nuclear doctrine to say that they reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in response to conventional weapons. So that is a change, but it's overall pretty vague. So I don't think that he's at the point where he's like actually considering which targets he's going to drop a nuke on. And there is some panic over this. And I think that's a little bit overblown. Also, the missiles that we gave, those ATACMs, that that acronym, like it's gross, but they're long range, but they're not long enough to reach Moscow. They only have a range of 190 miles, so they can't reach Moscow. Everyone in the world knows that. This is declassified information. And when Ukraine did use them, I think it was on the 18th, so that would be 2 days before this recording. When they did use them, the missiles actually landed closer to Kyiv than they did Moscow. It was in an area kind of north and to the east of Kyiv. But if you look at a map, that's actually west of where this war is being fought over. All that disputed territory is even further to the east. So it's like, yes, it's landing within Russia, but they didn't go and try and get St. Petersburg or Moscow.
A major population.
Although I do want to add that before I left this morning, they were then using British long-range missiles to do even more attacks. So it's not just us. There really are more than one NATO country that is involved in giving the Ukrainians these missiles. And Ukrainians don't have the satellite capability. They just physically don't have it to determine their own targets. And so there is, just by its very nature, we know...
We're telling them where to shoot it.
We're telling them where to shoot it using our technology.
We're telling them battleship, hey, B-12.
Precisely.
That would be a good place to
NATO,
punch into that old keypad.
Yep. This is a joint effort between NATO and Ukraine, and Vladimir Putin and the Russians are not stupid. They know this, and they're acknowledging it for what it actually is. So I think it's definitely an escalation, but I think this is one of those weird instances where having Trump coming into office in 2 months is actually a good thing for the world because there's such a question mark there. I think that if Biden's understudy was the one who was going to be taking power, I think this would be a much more precarious moment. But the fact that there's going to be this massive change in U.S. leadership and probably strategy, I don't think that it's in anyone's interest, especially Vladimir Putin's, to start a world war and force Trump to stay in a war that he's at least saying he doesn't want to be in. Now, if you look at his actions as president the first time, he escalated this Ukraine thing too. Like when he came into office, it was illegal for us to be giving Ukraine any kinds of offensive weapons. It was Donald Trump that gave them those weapons that Obama wouldn't give them. So it's like Donald Trump has never been the puppet of Putin that he's been pretended to be. And I think one of the reasons that the American people are so uninformed about all of the ways that Donald Trump as president was provocative towards Russia is because there was this narrative that he's like a puppet of Russia, and it just simply wasn't true.
Putin's cock holster, as Stephen Colbert said.
Yeah, I think that was because that was the narrative. We were withheld from information that is available if you're looking for it, that Trump is not this, best friend of Putin. So I have a lot of doubts that this is actually going to stop when Trump becomes president, but there is going to be a shift. And so when I'm looking at this moment right now, am I losing any sleep over like, oh my God, this is nuclear war? I'm not. And it's partially because Trump won the election.
Because of the election.
Yeah. So it's an escalation. I'm concerned about it, and fuck Joe Biden for doing it. But I'm not losing any sleep over it just yet.
Heaton.
I got two thoughts. The first thought is, I think this poses a serious risk of Putin realizing that we support Ukraine. I think he might be able to piece this one together. The second thought that I have, this is the legitimate thought that I have on this. Okay, so President Biden has authorized Ukraine to use the weapons we are providing to strike into Russian territory. In addition to the stuff I didn't know, and Jen, I appreciate you telling me all this. I did not know that about us lending them intelligence and satellite telemetry and so forth. Okay, so we've upgraded the level of the war and our involvement in the war by doing this. Okay, if this is a really risky escalation that is nudging us towards thermonuclear war, why are we doing it? And if it's not a risky escalation that is nudging us towards thermonuclear war, why didn't we do it 1,000 days ago when this war first started. That's the bit that I'm confused by here is if this is not dangerous, why didn't we do it a long time ago? If it is dangerous, why are we doing it at all? And the only conclusion that I can come to is that this is driven by American domestic policy rather than American foreign policy, that the Biden administration is looking at the incoming Trump presidency and saying, we got to play fast and loose before this guy gets in. So let's just escalate things before he gets in, which I do not think is a great way to go forward. I'm not losing sleep for the reasons that Jen brings up. I think that the Russian government, as odious and autocratic as it is nonetheless rational and knows that it's in its rational self-interest not to declare a nuclear war just before a regime shift happens within the United States. But the outgoing regime seems to be going, well, let's just take a risk because we'd rather try to facilitate this before the new guy comes in.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And it goes along with the strategy that we've not only heard in Congress, like I've heard it in my own episodes back when Congress was actually investigating this shit and did hearings about it. But we heard from Biden officials that their strategy is to have the war go on as long as possible so that they could bleed Russia. There was also documents that were recently leaked by the Gray Zone that confirmed that the British have the same exact strategy. And we've seen them actually do this before. It actually happened in Ukraine, where the strategy is to get the population to get so mad at their leader that they overthrow them. And then our government can come in and install a friendly government. And then they actually called it a new Marshall Plan for Russia, because we essentially want our corporations to have access to Russia's gas and their wheat, basically their natural resources. And even in Ukraine, like the whole Donbass region, which is where they're fighting over, there's a lot of fossil fuel riches there and a lot of lithium. So it's like, this is all about international commerce. It always has been. And
name one president's son that would make that true.
I'm open to the idea of a Marshall Plan, but the time to have done another Marshall Plan would have been in 1992 when the Soviet Union fell. Am I right on that date in the 90s?
Well, that's what they were
Soviet
trying to do.
But that would have been the time to do it. The Marshall Plan was predicated on the idea of, look, Europe has just been eradicated economically. We're going to provide economic support because we want to keep them a liberal democracy and part of the free world and capitalism. I think it was actually pretty successful insofar as that goes. The time to do that would have been when the Soviet Union collapsed, because that was our problem. Our problem was the totalitarianism and the communism.
They did try that in Russia. I mean, that's why we put up with that drunk for so long. And
Bill Clinton,
Yeltsin, like there was a lot of problems with that guy, but he was willing to open up the markets.
Yes.
But that's why their democracy also had to fail, because the people were going to vote a different way. I mean, there were tanks that were deployed against the Russian parliament. I mean, they kind of had to choose between capitalism and democracy, and we did not support democracy in Russia. So it's like, we've had that play before.
Can you please spell that out for me? It's my understanding that the tanks that were brought in were a military putsch trying to stop Yeltsin, and that it was an attempt of the Soviet regime to reinstate itself and overthrow the democracy. I could be wrong in this, but I'm unaware of a situation where the Russians had like a military putsch for capitalism but against democracy.
Well, I don't want to get into like all of Russian history while I don't have notes. But essentially, Yeltsin was a hero in Russia because of the tanks and like all of that. But like big picture, there was this effort to have democracy, or you could have the guy that was willing to open up the markets in Russia. And we supported the guy that was willing to open up the markets. And so, but the point, like, I don't want to get into like all of Russian history. What I want to say right now is that the strategy right now is to bleed Russia dry so that the Russian people will overthrow Vladimir Putin. They're counting on the Russian people being so mad at Putin. But in our own history, we've seen that when we're attacked in the way that the Russian territory is currently being attacked, you know, when we had 9/11, did we throw George
you
W.
rally
Bush
around the flag?
Exactly. You rally around the flag. So it doesn't work. We actually, like in Ukraine, one of the ways that this all began, if we remember, is that we basically orchestrated a coup, I will call it that, to get the pro-Russian president out of power. And the people, there was a civil war there for 8 years. Like that's how this all began. They didn't just like throw out the guy. There were people that were supportive of him. There were people that were supportive of the new government because like that's what they wanted. But it's never works out in the way these people think it does. Like back in the Obama administration, because none of us were paying attention and they got away with this coup in Ukraine, they kind of acted like, oh, this was such a smashing success. And then here we are 10 years later, and we're on the brink of World War III over their efforts. And yet they've learned nothing. They're employing the same strategy with Russia that they've employed in other places. And it's always been a nightmare. Like they did this shit in Libya, and that's now got open slave trades. And they're trying to do it in Lebanon right now, where they're trying to like terrorize the civilian population into overthrowing their own government. It never fucking works. And yet it's the same playbook over and over and over again. And I think like big picture, when we look at like, why are they doing this? Why is Biden doing this? Ukraine has been his personal project since he was vice president. He has 2 more months to make a difference. And the way that he can get his strategy, which is prolong this shit as long as possible, the way that he can ensure that is to trap the next person into staying in the war. And so the best way to do that is not to be, meeting with Putin and trying to find peace. It's to escalate this shit so that when Trump comes into office, it's so bad that he can't stop arming Ukraine. I think that's why they're doing this and why they're doing this now. And I think you're also correct in that this does have to do with the election. Because if he was knocking on the door of World War III 2 weeks before the election, that probably would be bad for Kamala, who had foreign policy issues in her own campaign without really Ukraine being a part of it. I mean, most people were pissed off at Kamala and Harris for the Gaza situation. So to add Ukraine to that, they had to wait till after the election. So I think this is strategically to tie Trump's hands and keep us in a war.
Maybe the thing that I would draw listeners' attention to.
I think he might get double carded.
What does that mean?
I think he's going to get. I think Biden's
Whoa,
going to get.
you don't want to get double carded. Like half.
He's going to get double carded.
Double carded though. Oof.
The Carter administration continues to this day to complain about the fact that it was the Reagan people that were drawing out a peace deal in Iran, and so Reagan got to free the hostages in Iran, and that was a problem. I think that there is a high likelihood, and it grows every day, that Donald Trump is going to fly once across the seas and settle both conflicts in a week, in like one trip, and then fly.
Well, let's hope that happens.
They're both.
I hope you're right, but
they're both more ripe now, and you're hearing Zelensky say things that he has not said over the last.
I am rooting
what?
for peace in all instances and hope that is the case, Justin. I'll draw people's attention to we have two conflicting or potentially conflicting foreign policy aims in regards to Ukraine. The two things that our government stated multiple times are we wish to strategically weaken Russia through this conflict, and we wish to minimize civilian casualties in Ukraine. And those can, and I will argue, are conflicted and at odds with one another, where if you're prolonging the conflict, you are also prolonging civilian casualties. And so they don't necessarily have to be in sync, but they I think can be and are at this point. And we've got some crosstalk going on. Justin, I apologize. Please go forth. What was the what is the change in Zelensky that you're seeing on the eve of the Trump election?
Oh, I'm just the fact that the sheer mention of any kind of negotiations is now not slapped down as an absolute slap in the face to the sovereignty of Ukraine. You've heard him budge a little bit more on that. I don't have any specific verbiage that I can remember. Just that is the impression that I've got in terms of following the way that he has talked about it. When he met with Donald Trump, he said, Donald Trump was somebody that he could work with going forward. And the reality is that if America's appetite for war in Ukraine is over, then it's about time to start negotiating.
Well, the appetite in Ukraine is also over as well, because the people that signed up to fight this, most of them, unfortunately, are already dead. The numbers of people, Ukrainians who are dead, is in the hundreds of thousands, which I didn't realize, but an enormous amount of their male population.
Russia too. I mean, Russia's bringing in North Korean troops, which
always a good sign. Always a good sign.
That's not a great sign.
Bring in the farm team.
Amazing.
Call Sol. Bring in the farm team.
I do think that this conflict is something that is at a point where you would probably see some kind of at least a temporary ending of hostilities sooner rather than later, and that at that point you can start hashing out where the lines are. The Gaza situation is more complicated. But again, the U.S. has an outsized role in it, and the State Department has an outsized role in it. And if, there's a reality that Iran is going to face that, look, they didn't try to kill Trump for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want him in. Iran is the financial backing for some of these forces here. And so there's just going to be a shifting of the geopolitical landscape that, considering how protracted and bloody both of these conflicts have been, I just think that there is more of a reality to doing it. And that's also, my own bias is showing that I think that the State Department is one of the most incompetent, paper pushing bag of dicks that I have seen in my lifetime. And
they're the worst.
You could name for me the entire cast of the last 4 seasons of The Real World and put them into the State Department, which is not far off from where Trump's cabinet is.
Yeah.
And I would say, fucking roll the dice. Roll the dice.
It has to be better than
Send
this.
Puck to Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Send everybody else to Vienna, and let's just start throwing around, terms. Let's see where we can get a deal, because I just don't think that this world. I mean, that's the other thing, is that Donald Trump doesn't delegate this shit. Donald Trump's gonna go to wherever this is, and he is going to say, here's a summit, let's talk about it. And things are just gonna move faster, at least if we're judging it by the last one.
Well, and he also doesn't do the silent treatment thing where it's like, oh, you've done something I don't like, so I'm not going to speak to you. Where Biden, it's like he won't speak to
Don't cross
Putin.
the red line. They cross the red line. We're very mad.
Yeah.
That's been Obama too. Obama did the same shit.
Yeah. It's preposterous. And the thing with Russia too that I don't think we're realizing is the silent treatment is now ending with Russia. It's like we've had this giant BRICS summit that I mentioned a couple weeks ago. So Russia's not isolated in this world whatsoever. In fact, the axis of resistance, as they call each other, is getting stronger as these sanctions that we use all the time are being applied to more and more countries. And so you've got this BRICS situation going on, and now Germany's chancellor is now speaking directly with Putin. So the silent treatment is ending. So if you just look at who's winning and losing this war, you've got the Ukrainians who are having to freeze the bank accounts of their men to get them to actually fight this thing. And on the other hand, you have Russia, who is able to bring in North Korean troops, who is becoming more diplomatically powerful, not less. And Ukraine's losing the fucking war. Like, they just need to admit it. They're losing the war. It's a matter of when. And the fact that the Biden administration's strategy is prolonging, again, I think the reason why all of this is happening is that is the only goal. Make the war last longer, which is so disgusting.
It's
and
attrition.
It is. And it's just, we care about the civilians, and it just shows how little they do.
Well, yeah, look, I've said this before, that Ukraine, the strategy of NATO and Ukraine to Russia is the exact same as Iran and Hamas is to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
They are the same thing. They are sand in the gears, heating.
Speaking of Russian assets, I would like to ask you guys a legitimate question about Tulsi Gabbard. I'm reminded of this. She's the incoming director of national intelligence. When I first became familiar with Tulsi Gabbard, my thoughts were great. I am a intervention skeptic myself. I will not say I would never commit U.S. troops or involvement, but the default is no until you convince me otherwise. And so I am very positively predisposed towards anybody that would prune back American overcommitment abroad. And she seems to be in that camp. When I started kind of just playing with that, I had multiple people that are in government reach out to me and go, you do not want to tether your wagon to this lady. She's nuts. She's truly crazy. And it's become a kind of truism online in many corners that she's a Russian asset. We're not speaking metaphorically here. She is a Russian asset. And I've had friends reach out to me and go, is there any truth to this? And my response hitherto has been, I think whenever anybody is critical of the national security apparatus or our foreign policy agenda, they are labeled as a kook automatically, like Ron Paul, like Dennis Kucinich, like Tulsi Gabbard. But I will admit that I've had multiple people that have reached out to me and said, no, she's crazy. Here are some examples in her personal life. So my question to you is there anything to the latter that she's an opportunist, she's feckless, this is just where she's going as a politician rather than any actual ideological agenda? And two, is there any evidence that there is any type of Russian collusion, or is it really just she's not taking our neocon position or our muscular liberal position, therefore she's on Team Russia, therefore by deductive logic and the transitive property, she is a Russian asset?
I will let Jen take the majority of this answer, but I will just point out that if Tulsi Gabbard is indeed a Russian asset, then Lloyd Austin, the sitting Secretary of Defense, should probably think about removing her as an active duty or as a reserve servicewoman in the American Army. That is something that probably shouldn't happen if she is an active stooge of Russia. Jen?
Which I wholeheartedly believe she is not. Because I remember when this was started to be said around about her, and it was during the Obama years, because she was a brand new, like, we have to just remember what happened to her. She's a drop dead gorgeous Hawaiian congresswoman. She's got brown skin, gorgeous hair. And so she becomes a new member of Congress, and they wanted to, or they being like Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, wanted her to be like the DEI poster child of everything they wanted to do. She was offered a DNC position when she didn't even understand what the position was. So she's like automatically catapulted into leadership because they liked the look of her. What they didn't like was her independent streak. And so in about 2014, 2015, she, I believe, was on the House, either Armed Services or Foreign Affairs Committee. I can't remember which one. But the State Department came in and they were very openly saying in these words that their goal was to regime change Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And Tulsi had a problem with that. And so before those, before troops were on the ground and all those things, in the process of trying to stop it, she actually went to Syria to try and figure out what's going on for herself. And she met with Bashar al-Assad. And from that meeting on forward, she was branded as a Russian puppet because Bashar al-Assad and Russia were partners.
She had the temerity to speak to someone that was contravened to the ruling regime in the United States.
Call him, what was the term? She didn't call him like a war criminal or something like that.
Well, at the time he was being accused of using chemical weapons against his own people.
Yeah. And
there's been all kinds of investigations into that. I'm just going to put it as a gray area, but I do not think that that is actual fact. We were funding some pretty gnarly people that had some weapons that were pretty gnarly.
There's a thing that either came up during the primary or something like that. But to your point, there's like a bumper sticker of like, she did not call Bashar al-Assad a blank. And I can't remember
this. This sounds like you could listen to me or Jen. I think Jen and I have similar interpretations of what's going on in Ukraine, that we're looking to weaken Russia and send a message to Taiwan and so on and so forth. And those are the primary aims of the proxy war, which is what it is. And yes, Ukraine can do whatever it wants. It's a sovereign country. I'm only talking about American involvement in it. I don't know why I have to explain that every single time I bring this up. But when I bring this up, people will go like, well, you're doing Russian talking points. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. I'm just not in favor of your like, just because I don't agree with you does not mean that I'm an asset of the Kremlin. I don't like Russia, or excuse me, I don't like the Russian government. I don't like Putin. But there is this sort of deductive logic of, if you're not on my plan, you must be on the enemy plan. And it sounds like that's what's happened to Tulsi, is that she's not on the plan, therefore she must be a Russian asset, and she is literally on the payroll, or she's a useful idiot or something like that. But the only other option is she is a Russian asset. Okay.
Well, it was a 1-2 punch for her, because not only did she try and stop that regime change operation from happening, and like, it was her party, it was the Obama administration that was trying to do it. And so she was considered a traitor for going and fact finding and finding out that it was actually what she thought it was, which was a shady operation. We were funding, random groups of terrorists essentially to fight the Syrian government. And then the way that Russia got involved in this is that, Russia started defending because like, we were not welcome to be there in Syria. And so Syria asked Russia for help with which Russia provided. And so during the campaign, which she was in, she ran for president in 2016, if you'll remember. And at the time,
2020.
What?
2020.
No, I'm talking about 2016.
She ran in 2016? No, she was on the DNC.
She was in the primary.
No, she wasn't.
She was Bernie Sanders' VP
she was on the DNC
in
committee in
California
and she quit after the Bernie stuff.
Okay, well, I remember this much from 2016. I remember that Hillary Clinton at the time was advocating for no-fly zones over Syria, which means shooting down Russian planes. And I remember Tulsi Gabbard publicly, possibly on Joe Rogan, saying, that is an incredibly dangerous thing to do. This Syria thing is a regime change operation. And if you start shooting down Russian planes, that is World War III. That is what I remember from Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe it wasn't in a debate. Maybe it was just from podcasts or whatever. But I remember her going against their nominee for president and saying, this is a very dangerous position that this person is taking. And so maybe she did it as a surrogate for Bernie.
She was a public Bernie backer in 2016.
Okay.
She was on the DNC thing. And then the email leaks happened the day before the convention in Philadelphia. She publicly quits the DNC and in protest of how they treated Bernie, which does nothing to soften what eventually became the cutout for her.
Tulsi, it's the job of the Democratic Party.
Of course, it was the Russians that leaked the emails.
Because it's not like her point about Syria, if you're the DNC, is not, hey, this is a really dangerous thing to do. Like, it's not just about Syria. You're actually having a proxy war with Russia here, which was her point. If you're the DNC, that is, you are a traitor, not only to the country, but to the party, first and foremost, to the party and to your party's nominee.
The party exists to be
her
an enthusiastic rubber stamp of what the party leaders have come up with. That's the point of democracy. The point of democracy is to show that the people support. I had a conversation about this, by the way, at a conference I was at recently, and we were talking about democracy, and a guy went, but what about when democracy makes the wrong decision? And he gives this example. He goes, Sweden at one point had a national referendum. They drove on the left side of the road, and they had a national referendum on should we go from the left side of the road to driving on the right side of the road? There'd be all sorts of economic windfalls. It'd be great. And the people overwhelmingly preferred to drive on the left side of the road. Like, wasn't it the right thing to do for the government to overrule the people and say that you've made the wrong choice? And I went, no, you're literally saying democracy is just a rubber stamp for the elites to do what they think is right.
Stuff them in a locker. Stuff them in a locker immediately. Whenever anybody makes a point like that, you should be able to conjure a locker that you could just kick.
No, I'm with H.L. Mencken. Democracy is the system where which the people get what they deserve, good and hard. And if the people of Sweden went, we want to drive on the left side of the road, economics be damned. Well, that they made that choice. That's still a more legitimate way of approaching that choice than having a clutch of very well educated people go, no. We or like in Britain when Brexit happened, there was a group of people that were like, okay, but the government doesn't have to do it, right? And it was like, so the whole point of this was to trick the population into supporting what the government was already going to do, and just go, look, we're a democracy. But if they don't do it, go, no, we're not going to do it. Nonsense. I have no time for these shenanigans.
Yeah. So I don't think that she's.
So we are skeptical of the Tulsi skepticism.
Oh, very much so. And if you really want to know who Tulsi Gabbard is, she has sat down with Joe Rogan at least 4 times, if not more. So that's at least 12 hours of just unfiltered conversation. You can find out exactly who she is. I don't agree with all of her positions, but she's an independent thinker. She is a member of the armed forces. She cares very much about our troops. And like, if they are going to put themselves in harm's way, Tulsi Gabbard wants to make sure that it's worth it and in our nation's interest and not in pursuit of regime change operations so that we can steal another country's resources. Like, she's just not down with that. And so having listened to her speak to a normal human being, which Joe Rogan is, he's just a dude, for that many hours, I love the pick of Tulsi for DNI. I love that we'll have a normal person in there who can get in there and like see what the spooks are actually up to, possibly stop some of their more nefarious things. Like, I really like her in that position. And I don't think that she's a Russian stooge at all.
I'm of that position. So we're probably going to get into some of the Trump nominations in the email section of today's show. But with Tulsi and everybody's freaking out going, she doesn't like the national security apparatus. And I'm like, James Clapper lied.
I'm so glad you said that.
Under oath to Congress, like literally one of the heads of these agencies with a straight face lied. So I don't mind there being an outsider coming in and going, you don't get to just do whatever you want. with impunity. Like, we are actually going to audit this shit. We're going to have some friction involved, maybe some checks and balances even within this nebulous fourth branch of the United States government that, does its own thing.
I'm glad you brought up Clapper, because I don't know enough about Tulsi Gabbard. I have not paid attention aside from her run in 2020. But as soon as James Clapper was like, she is unfit, it would be terrible if she was DNI. I was like, oh, okay, I'm 100% for her now. It's like, if James Clapper hates you, then I'm like, roll the dice. Like, this is my take on a lot of these Trump nominees now, where I've come to is like, if they're all Tim Robinson Hudsucker proxy, just bring a bunch of people up from the mailroom just to see what happens. I'm like, let's go. Because I think that a lot of these have become way too comfortable, way too unaccountable. And the machine just kind of hums along. And as we saw with Trump's first term, reacted violently to the idea of outsiders coming in, to the point where Crossfire Hurricane did happen. And we did see that the FBI was weaponized against the sitting government, the sitting president. That's no bueno.
Yeah.
Like, I think now that we're on the other side of it, what happened with the DOJ when Trump was running? Not great. We should not be having these federal cases brought in situations where the public does not immediately understand what the charges are. Like, this was bad. Like, I think, yes, elevate novices. Go.
On the note of the novices, though, I want to weigh in on this briefly. I want everybody to remember who Biden brought in when he got elected, because a lot of the people that he brought in that nobody really reacted to in the mainstream were not people that had any relevant experience. Who's our current Secretary of Transportation? Pete Buttigieg. What was his highest level of governmental experience? He ran a mid-sized city as mayor in Indiana. I like mayors. That's terrific. But did that really have anything to do with national infrastructure in terms of transportation?
And the college isn't even aligned with a Power Five. Come on.
Who came in as the Department of Health and Human Services? Xavier Becerra. He's an attorney. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't have any experience in health and human services. He was just an attorney and part of the Democratic Party. The Department of Energy, the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm. Okay, she's governor. I'll give her some leeway. Department of Homeland Security. Who's that? Alejandro Mayorkas. Again, he's an attorney.
Sterling.
He's an attorney who's part of the Democratic apparatus, but he wasn't out of any sort of security background. Deb Haaland, who ran Department of the Interior, she was a member of Congress, but like, okay, I'll give her some, but like Alejandro Mayorkas, Xavier Becerra, Pete Buttigieg, these were also like political picks more than they were the steady hand of a 30-year veteran in that particular department. So this is not entirely a break from what we've been doing the last few years anyway. It's just that the Republicans are coming in, so everybody's freaking out.
Yeah. I'm trying to look up here real quick what Lloyd Austin's resume was, because
we know he was a Raytheon director.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I just didn't want to minimize him too much beyond that, but I know that he came out of Raytheon.
Yeah.
Where it's like
he's one of the top guys at Raytheon and then became our Secretary of Defense. It's one of the most disgusting conflicts of interest. And because it was a Democrat, we were pretty quiet about it.
Well, at least he was in good health.
You're never going to get over that, are you?
No, I won't get over that. No, I'm sorry. I think that's disqualifying. Disqualifying that you go to the hospital and don't tell anybody and everyone pretends it's fine. And your deputy in command is halfway through a mojito in Puerto Rico when she finds out that, oh, sorry, you're running the American military, the greatest fighting force the world has ever known. Sorry, whoopsie doodle. 2 hot wars, by the way. So go ahead and spin those plates, because Lloyd Austin couldn't be bothered to tell anybody, hey, ambulance, make sure you come in with the lights off so nobody realizes that I'm in the fucking hospital.
I love bringing this up because your head turns into a different color.
Oh, yeah. God.
On Justin Robert Young's deathbed, many years from now, 60, 70 years from now, when Justin Robert Young's on his deathbed, they're gonna call the family in and go, do you have any last words? And then he will crack a joke and go, call the president and let them know right now I'm not fit to serve as Secretary of Defense. Piece of shit Lloyd. And then he'll say, by the way, Bill Weld was of low character.
Yes,
and then he'll die. Then the ghost will be released from his body.
It's just gonna be me. That's my rosebud. It's like why was Justin in his final days abandoned and alone by his friends and family, just muttering, Lloyd Austin.
Whereas what I will
ambulance had no lights. Low moral character. Bill Weld.
I will go out on a prank. I will go. Come here. I have 18 Bitcoin and about 40 ounces of gold, and they're. And then I'll die. Just leave on a joke.
Patreon.com/we're not wrong is no joke. This week we'll be talking a little bit more about the Trump era, Trump 2, Electric Boogaloo, and specifically the idea that his silly dance has now broken into the mainstream, at least when it comes to sports culture. That and much more. If you listen to the Patreon episodes, then you understand that these are wide-ranging conversations.
They're
I don't know
fun.
how long we're going to stick on John Jones doing the Donald Trump dance.
You guys think that we're letting our hair down now. We're letting our pants down in the Patreon episodes. That's where we really let loose.
It is. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. Let's talk about Blue Sky. Blue Sky, of course, is a microblogging platform that has now surged to 20 million users, gaining 5 million in just 5 days following the U.S. presidential election. The rapid growth stems from dissatisfaction with Elon Musk's X, formerly Twitter, which many who have fled say is not only plagued by bots, extreme content, and misinformation, but also is being used to train Elon Musk's AI effort, Grok. High-profile users, including Hollywood figures like Lizzo, Stephen King, and Mark Hamill, have migrated to Blue Sky, along with major media outlets like The Guardian, which denounce X as toxic. Blue Sky has become the preferred alternative for some of these, I will say, left-leaning creative professionals and news organizations. But despite its rise, Blue Sky remains far behind X's 300 million users and Meta's Threads' 250 million monthly active users. Andrew Heaton, what's your Blue Sky account? Have you fully migrated? If not, why do you love Hitler?
Here's my thing. You have all of these large accounts on Twitter that are tweeting all the time and getting into flame wars and posting dank memes, and they go, wait a minute. This has become a time suck. It's become a toxic intellectual dive bar in which people throw beer bottles at each other. No actual fertile exchange of ideas and some sort of electric salon is happening here. I'm going to leave this place and I'm going to keep doing this stupid bullshit. What is wrong with these? Like you were so close. Like there was a tweet years ago from Nick Offerman, and I think he's now back on Twitter, and I'm saddened by this. But he had a tweet back in like 2017 when I was working at News Corp, where he went on Twitter and he went, "This was a mistake. I'm going outside. Join me." And I loved that. I thought that was great. I think it's a really good idea for people that spend lots and lots of time on Twitter to go, would I be happier if I learned guitar? The answer is yes. You would be happier if you learned. Nobody who's arguing on Twitter 3 hours a day is having their best life. It's just you're not doing it. And also in the last couple of weeks, a couple of my friends have been targeted for online dog piles, for lack of a better term. And I'll read some of the comments. The people are trying to scare her. They're trying to like, we're coming after you. And I'm like, you are too cowardly to use your real name on Twitter, and you're trying to fight with somebody at 2:00 on a Tuesday. You're not important. If you were, you wouldn't have time to be fucking around with this. Anyway, I think social media is good for two things: coordinating flood relief and funny cat memes. That's it. It's for immediate stuff that you need right now in an unfiltered environment, or fun shit. And it's not useful as this toxic echo chamber. So the attempts of people fleeing Twitter to go to Truth Social or Blue Skies to create their own echo chamber in which to masturbate is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. I'm glad they're leaving, Everybody leave. If all you want to do is lip off about politics with people you agree with and you crumple like a foil ball when somebody questions you, please go to an echo chamber. But I think it's a waste of your time to do it. And I will say one more thing. Stephen King, who I am a fan of, and I've read many of his books. I quite like Stephen King. His sign-off was, I'm leaving Twitter. Tried to stay, but the atmosphere has just become too toxic. Follow me on Threads if you like. I'm going to read a few other tweets from Stephen King. A piece of shit is perfectly adequate description of Leningrad Lindsay. That's from Stephen King in December 14th, 2019. Next, the Republican Party. What a goat fuck. That would be from Stephen King in February of 2024. And the Trump Mafia. I'd like to knock their stupid, maskless, super spreading heads together. You bought it. You paid for it. Have a nice fucking day. That was in October of 2020. So like, what is the deal that you're okay because we are the good people? We're allowed to be mean and toxic to other people. That's fine because we're just being just. But the bad people that know they're bad deep down, they're not allowed to like, what is, I think it's all so stupid.
Maybe the van was the hero in the story. Stephen King got run off the road by a van. Anyway,
could you tell I didn't get the joke?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never even read one of his books, so I don't.
11/22/63 is a masterpiece. He is a great writer.
I mean, he's one of the best writers. I mean, and if anything,
he doesn't understand inflation. I'll tell you that fucking much. In a time travel book, he goes back into the past to buy meat in the 50s because he thinks that it's cheaper. Anyway, but he's a great writer.
Yeah. He also, nor does he particularly understand third acts, but he's an amazing writer. He's a great writer, and
I'm sure he is. Those tweets weren't exactly prose, but
no, because some people, we should license political commentary. Like, you should not be allowed to do it. You should be forced to not do it.
Now you sound like the leadership of old Twitter.
No.
Yeah. Wait, let's do the Heaton Saves America plan. The Heaton Saves America plan is this: donate $1 to charity every time you do a political tweet. I did it for a year, and you know what? I'll do it again this year. How about that? And in 2025, for every political tweet I put out, I'll give $1 to charity. If you do it too, we'll fix every problem in America. Gas bags.
If you really, really, really believe that the country's about to fall apart, and you really, really, really believe that this is a horrible mistake and a miscarriage of justice, that Donald Trump's the president again, look, dog, the bar is set for how much you care about it. Storm the Capitol or shut the fuck up. Like, we know the line. So either go do it, or I don't care, because you don't care as much as those people do, and they did it last time. So if you're not all setting up and getting your gas mask together and putting on your little shaman hat, your little blue shaman hat, then maybe you just need to shut the fuck up, because you're just here on Twitter and you're ruining your family group chats because your dumb midwit takes are out. Otherwise, look, reorganize, regroup. Think about running for office. Think about volunteering for politics. If this is what you really care about, where's your clipboard? What are you planning to do to change the world? Because guess what? A bunch of people, some of which were named Cat Turd 2, are now have a hotline into the White House. You want to know why? Because they decided that they were going to affect change for their cause. They were right. You appealed to authority. You kept thinking that there was a mainstream media that made you believe that you were correct, that there was a bunch of bureaucrats that were telling you that everything was fine, and you were wrong. You were led astray. I don't blame you for feeling mad. I don't blame you for feeling upset about the loss of gravity, but either you're going to do something about it or you're not. And just yelling and screaming and stomping your feet is not where it should be. Anyway, Jen, what's your blue sky?
I'll get to blue sky. It's just funny that you say that, because I actually sent a message to someone that I don't actually know all that well. But she has said nothing on social media since the election. And I've gotten all these messages from people, either in my audience or in my personal life, so many messages from people just freaking out about Trump. And yet this one girl that I know, she doesn't post on social media, but I do know that she flew to Arizona to knock on doors for Kamala. And so I just reached out to her and just wanted to let her know how cool I think that is, that stay in the game. I think it's cool that you're in the game. Like, she's been one of the most graceful, quiet people about this. And she was actually in the game. So it's just, I feel like a lot of these people that are having these panics and this protest, I'm getting off X and I'm going to blue sky. Like, it's not really doing anything. I've lost about 100 followers, which is the only reason I knew this was happening, because I wasn't really tweeting that much. And I'm like, so why am I hemorrhaging followers? And I think we all are, because this is a real thing. There are a lot of people that are canceling their Twitters. And so when it comes to Blue Sky, for me personally, I got an email from someone who's probably listening to this, very well-intentioned. I don't think this person was trying to do anything wrong, but the person said like, oh, hey, like we're all moving to Blue Sky. I can reserve your name for you. And I'm like, no, I don't want anyone but me reserving my name. And so I thanked him and then I reserved my names on it. So I've signed in. Yeah. I have my name reserved, but I don't intend that too,
from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I don't intend to switch. I mean, first of all, just like the user base, you've got 20 million on Blue Sky. You have a 250 million still on Twitter. So it's just, if I am going to speak, I have a following already on Twitter. That's where I'm going to speak about this stuff. But also this entire idea that since Elon has taken over X, that it has become this right-wing nightmare is just not true in my experience, because we have two tabs. It's for you or following. I have mine permanently set to following, and I'm seeing the people I follow. I see Brianna Joy Gray all the time. Yeah. I see Crystal Ball all the time. I see the Young Turks all the time. They're not being shadow banned. Yeah, there are some right wingers that are allowed on there again, but mine is not some like right wing hellscape. So I think there's just, there's right wing content in general. That's a threat to me. Like, I think that's a lot of sour grapes and just frankly bullshit. Because if you're not following a bunch of right wing people, I think you're kind of lying when you say that that's what that site has become, because I use it every single day and it's not my experience. So I'm staying on X, but just in general, I use X not to fight with people. I stopped that years ago, but I use it to find out what's going on in the world. So like today, I wanted to see what's going on with Ukraine and firing the missiles. Yeah. And I was able to get that answer immediately upon signing on. And I was able to see it from different sources. I was able to see it from within Ukraine, from within Russia, and from Western media. All of this confirmed in under a minute. This does have usefulness to it. And so the one emotion I have about this move to Blue Sky is actually related to The Guardian. By them deciding that in some weird ass protest that they're just not going to be on X anymore, I liked getting information from The Guardian, and now I'm not going to get it. So they're limiting their own reach. And just as a content creator, I find all my time spent on social media to mainly be a waste of my time. So I'm just posting where I am in that moment and where I'm most comfortable. Lately, that's been my Instagram stories, which I don't have a lot of Instagram followers, but that's just, I'm on Instagram because that's where I'm seeing pictures of my friends, but also getting information. So that's where I'm posting stuff lately. But I'm not going to do this strategy that we were told, 10 years ago, you had to do to be a content creator, where you post every day, multiple times a day, everywhere people are at, because that's now 15 different platforms with new ones being invented every day. And every minute I spend creating these bits of social media content, which we know now the metaverse is not really allowing political content to go viral anyway. Like, you're fighting against an algorithm that's completely opaque. And so I don't even know what's allowed to go viral. It's exhausting. I'm a podcaster. That's what I do. And right now I have a following on Twitter. That's enough. I enjoy Instagram. So by the way, if you care to see what I'm thinking on social media, you should be following me on Instagram, not Twitter right now. Because my stories.
A lot of side boob, I find. It's a very risque account for people.
I mean, I do play volleyball in a sports bra. So that's not unheard of in my stories.
There you go, listeners.
But there's dog content and then there's political stuff.
If you want to, the following Jen on Instagram stories is to see like, good morning, a picture of like Austin in the morning. 14 dead children in Gaza. And then like up and at 'em. A spike picture of like volleyball.
It's all over the place. Yeah. But that shows you that I'm just posting there because I'm there. And I'm done trying to be everywhere because the rules keep changing. I don't think it's mentally healthy. So like, am I going to start spending time on Blue Sky, which I think Justin has accurately diagnosed as where the lefties are going, to be with just the lefties. And it sounds exhausting to me to be over there. So
sounds great fun. I'm
not doing it.
I don't want to spend any more of my life on social media than I already am. Like there is utility to it. Jen's identified some of the utility. It is very useful in terms of being able to disseminate information gatekeeper free very quickly. There's benefit to that. Facebook, which I really don't use anymore, I got kind of burned on that, is very useful, particularly for people like us that have communities that are spread across the globe. But I find more and more that like I'm using WhatsApp just to text people individually. Like I like staying in contact with people. I don't want to have to be a one-man news team for an unpaid site that I could get yanked from at any time. So best case scenario, I tweet something really funny that George Takei retweets. Worst case scenario, I get fired. No, this is not a good use of my time. I don't particularly want to do it. And so I'm more inclined to just kind of steer clear, to the point where like I want to do a thing maybe next year where I take a month where I just have an auto message on my phone that says I'm only looking at texts between like 9 to 10 a.m. and like after 6 o'clock p.m. or something like that. I don't know. I want to disengage more than I am at the moment. I very rarely get on social media and leave feeling happier than when I came on. I never feel worse when I talk to people.
Well, and study after study verifies that it is bad for your mental health. There's no study that has said that it's good for you. So, I mean, that's fine. But I also don't think that you have to like announce like, I am not checking my text messages.
The worst.
Did you see Don Lemons on Twitter?
No.
Oh my God. He had this whole thing like announcing he was leaving Twitter, and it's like, no one cares. Bye.
No, it's just, it's the
just
drunk
don't.
at the bar screaming that he's leaving. And it's like, number one, you're not, because guess what? What's going to happen in a half hour? We're still going to hear you screaming about how you're about to leave. Like everybody who announces that they are leaving, like all I can hear is the Hamilton, like, you'll be back. Like it's the worst. Just leave. You're allowed. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to leave. If you want to leave, leave. And to Heaton's point, absolutely. Sometimes it's not good. You are putting a lot of time and effort into a product that you will get literally nothing out of unless you are putting a tremendous amount of time into that platform, which like, Elon's paying people a little bit. I don't know exactly how feasible it is. It's certainly not my cup of tea. That being said, the world is learning lessons that some of us learned in the fucking 90s. Message boards are fun, but don't take them too goddamn seriously. If you make a message board your personality, you're gonna have a bad time. Everything gets small. It'll always reward the people that are going to spend more time doing it than you will. And it is just not good for your health. Get what you can out of it. Keep it light, keep it fun, keep it moving, and then get the fuck off so you don't degrade your own life.
Yeah, so the other thing I'll add to this is I do not think it is healthy for you or advantageous for your political goals to only surround yourself with people you agree with. I don't think that ends up working out, because if you only surround yourself with people you agree with, you live in an echo chamber, and you grow unaccustomed to being challenged by contrary ideas, and they become far more dangerous when you encounter them in the real world. That's not something you want to do. The other thing is like, gang, like as somebody that wasn't exactly thrilled with the Republican takeover here recently, the whole, well, I guess America's dumber and fucking more racist and fascist than I already thought it was. We should join Canada before the fucking fascists shoot us in the face. That is not a winning strategy for all of the people that just voted for Trump. Like one of my friends is a comedian and real estate agent in New York, and he was just texting me the other day, and like he's a Democrat, and he was texting me that he took somebody out to look at a house, and they were like, I can't, there's a Trump sign next to this house. I could never. And it's like, really? You couldn't live next to a Trump voter? That's beyond the pale for you, is to just share the country with people. And so doing that digitally strikes me as that same kind of, there's a specific personality type. It's not emblematic of the entire Democratic Party or the progressive movement, but there's a subset of it that always talks about politics as if giving a speech to a room full of people that emphatically agree with them. And this particular personality type is insufferable, and I do what they believe. Yes, please leave.
If I will take it all the way back in terms of liberal thought to the demonization of Fox News, that Fox News was not just a center-right place where there was obviously a bias in terms of the commentary, but the news gathering was pretty much the same, with just like a more right-leaning editorial lens. It was deceptive, dangerous, a problem. It was perverting the minds of so many people. The fact that it's successful is its own thing. And you saw mainstream art by people in the liberal worldview that demonized it. Not saying oh, can we learn something from this? Is there a problem with this? Are we tilting too far away from where people
why are
are?
voters failing to connect with us? Why are they failing
And
so badly to connect with us?
This election was the piece de resistance to it. It was just the bubble was fully complete. So much so that you heard people that I respect, that I really do believe are great political minds. And I'm thinking of like Hacks on Tap is a great podcast that I like. It's David Axelrod, Mike Murphy, and they were buying into the final few days of the election. Wow, the energy at these Trump rallies, it's really flagging. People are really responding to how ragged he's getting at these rallies. You know, Tony Hinchcliffe has totally blown the election for Trump because he said something mean about Puerto Rico. And it's like the bubble was perfectly constructed. It had been perfectly made. So if you just wanted to hear these things, even if you were smart, you were led to believe it, that Tony fucking Hinchcliffe could eliminate in the minds of Puerto Rican Americans every other issue that they might had. No. The Kill Tony man made a joke. And so therefore, it's not impressive that Donald Trump sold out Madison Square Garden. No, the only thing that matters to voters is Tony Hinchcliffe. And it's like, congratulations, you played yourself.
So I'm actually going to disagree with you a little bit on that thesis that like the demonization of Fox News was undeserved. I think they were the start of this siloing of news into basically propaganda outlets. And I remember when I first learned about Fox, because I didn't see it until Outfoxed, that documentary came out. Like I didn't see it as Republican propaganda until I literally had it explained to me. And then instead of they did demonize it. And then what happened was MSNBC and a lot of the corporate media decided to copy it, but go in the other direction. And so they demonized and then did the bad thing. And I think when it comes to the Democrats in general, that is kind of why their voters are going away from the party, because they keep demonizing and then seeing it as permission to do the bad thing. And I think Fox News was a part of that, because now you have MSNBC, which is basically Blue Fox, and everything that you just said about the way they treat the Tony Hinchcliffe thing and just like the media bubble that they've created, they just mirrored exactly what Fox did. So they said it was bad and copied it. And I think they were right the first time that it was bad and they should have been better. And I think in politics, when they say that, you know, Republicans are bad for being warmongers and then they go off and be warmongers, it's kind of like, no, you're supposed to be better. You're supposed to be what you say they should be. You should be yourself. And so I think that goes for media and the party itself. Like you can't demonize something and then copy that behavior and then expect people to support you.
I think that documentary sucked out Fox. And I had a problem with it from the jump, in that like Fox News is not anything revolutionary. Like if what you are complaining about is that there are opinion programs from 8 to 10, then sure, you can say that is a corrosive element to American culture. But it was speaking to a large percentage of people who felt that they had no representation on television. And that's why Fox News consolidated that thought. So you can either say, okay, why are they flocking to these people? Why is this happening? Let's figure that out. Or you can say, this is evil, this is poison. Let's find a new reason to laugh at middle America. And that's where I think that it went, and it continued to snowball into the point where the perfect echo chamber was created.
But I don't think, like, I was an 18-year-old when I watched Outfoxed. And so when I saw what they were doing, I felt tricked, because I was expecting them as the news to give me analysis of like, this is what's going on in the world, and to give me all the news, not just the news that fit the narrative. And so that's why I feel like that documentary at that time in my life, when I was so young and didn't understand what was going on, like I was looking for reasons why, when I was in Europe, why were the people in America behaving the way they did in regards to the Iraq war? Why would they support it in the way that the Europeans didn't?
Because Europeans are stupid.
Well, they were also getting different news, which I experienced from Germany. Like it just wasn't covered the same. And so when I saw what Fox News did, I did see it as nefarious, because they were cheerleading for a war. And I think they've cheerleaded for a lot of policies where instead of just giving me the information and allowing me to decide, which they were saying they were doing, they were putting a spin on it and trying to explain things to me in a way that had a very tilted worldview while saying they were fair and balanced. So that was the thing. They didn't come out and say, we are right wing, we are Republican propaganda. They didn't tell you what they were. They said, we are fair and balanced. And they weren't. That was the lie.
All right. Heaton.
Well, what I wanted to say is that I actually am kind of alarmed by some of the responses to the election in terms of media analysis, and that I watched a clip on The View, or a clip of The View, where they went, the reason that we lost this election is because of misinformation. We need to regulate misinformation. We have to have somebody, and I'm like, to be real fucking clear on this, you think the solution to the problem is to put Donald Trump appointees or congressional appointees, either one of which is controlled by to put them in charge of determining what counts as true and what can be disseminated to the general public. In your mind, that would be a great solution to the problem. I think it would be a very bad idea to have a government agency in charge of determining what's true and what's harmful. We could almost call it wrongthink. What wrongthink should not be permitted to exist?
Yeah, and actually, if you want to know why a lot of people like Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe and Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz and all these people turned towards Trump, this was their main reason. Yeah. Because they saw one side and it was the Democratic side, and they are not wrong. It was the Democrats who were the ones that were pushing for censorship on a massive scale and to have the government do it. And when you saw the Twitter files, you saw the people who were doing it, and they did come from one side of the aisle. And that was, I've seen a lot of people being like, I just don't understand my countrymen. And it's like, well, if you understand this one issue, you'll understand what's going on a lot more, because that drove a lot of people over to Trump, especially people that make their living on the internet.
Trump released, like, day after he got elected, he released a statement on, like, we're creating a free speech commission, and it will I will, through executive action, fire any federal employee who's interfered with free speech on any private platform. And people were freaking out, and I was like, great, good, thank you for doing that. Like, good.
Yeah, me too.
Why is this remotely controversial that having some bloodless appercheek in Washington, D.C., who's enthralled to one of two parties, quietly creeping over via the NSA and CIA to Twitter and going, don't tell that. Don't let that. Fuck them. Get them out of there.
Yeah. I mean, and this gets to, even take politics out of it, it is just people guessing what the right thing to do to shape public communication is. And we saw this during COVID. And guess what? I don't blame anybody particularly. I know some people will, for making certain guesses about what the best public health policy was going to be, but it changed a lot. It went from masks are okay to masks are necessary to masks are kind of okay to, like, herd immunity is 40%. Maybe it's 60%. Maybe it's 55%.
Don't forget the lab leak theory is super racist. If you even say it out loud, you're a racist. You're not allowed to even contemplate it. You're a racist. It is verboten.
Yeah.
Like, biggest media risk I've ever taken on my program, I think, was bringing on Matt Ridley to talk about this, because it was such a hot way. And now it's like, everybody's like, yeah, it turns out it was probably lab leak theory from China.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you said that people should be, like, kicked off the air for white supremacy if they said this not 3 months ago.
Because, by the way, the not racist philosophy is that weirdo Chinese people eat live animals so much that a pandemic happened.
And, like, I feel
gross.
so bad, because in the beginning, like, that's what we were told. Someone, like, ate a bat, and I believed it. I believed so much of it. And in the beginning, I was hanging on all these words. And so as they change, like, I will never forget Anthony Fauci testifying to Congress that if a vaccine comes out in under a year, it was rushed and probably not safe.
Yes.
And then it comes out in under a year, and he's like, we all need to take it. And I was like, but you you said this thing. So yeah, these are crazy times. And I think that there were a lot of people in media that didn't forget and decided to vote for Trump.
Well paid as Fauci be wrong.
Yeah. And to the point of the federal stuff, the Twitter files, the Facebook files, you just saw people intervening and saying, censor this.
Yeah.
Make sure that these kind of things don't go viral. And I think the where it pushed way too far was the Hunter laptop, where it was like, this is actually something that should materially affect an election. It is the likes of which we have never seen, that a fucking firecracker of crack smoking and whore fucking and like all sorts of crazy. And that's before we get into any kind of nefarious element of dealing within the family and influence peddling. And yet that was like, nope, Russian disinformation. Sorry. 57 very smart people, including James Clapper, signed a letter, and that means it should be demonetized, delisted. New York Times should lose their Twitter account, like that said. And so that's where I think that's the farthest where even in that moment you saw pushback from some people, and the worm has only turned further from there. But I don't know. Jen, it does seem like there is a thing that you often come back to, and I think it is probably more aligned with the majority of people who are listening, which is that feeling of betrayal from either authorities or from media, or that was something that very much shaped your political existence, and it continues to shape where you look for malfeasance. And that's something that I think, from my perspective, when I look at like Fox News or any kind of media stuff, I see it more as a collection of people who are making a decision, very rarely because they have a overarching goal, but rather because of certain self-interest and stuff like that. Heaton?
Listeners, as a white man in a suit in Washington, D.C., let me assure you, Jen Briney is wrong. We have things under control. We are taking care of everything, and we went to the right schools and know the right people, if you catch my drift, and just continue to pay your taxes so that we can funnel it into corn subsidies. Thank you.
We're not wrong pod at gmail.com is where you need to go. Revising our nuclear doctrine. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Bird flu writes, bird flu rates are increasing and spreading. Please don't completely brush off this story.
Did we brush off that story?
I am currently doing it right now. The gift that keeps on heating writes, Heaton, I'm giving your books, your most recent magnum opus, as gifts for Christmas. Thanks for the effort you put into them.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That took a lot of time and effort, and I'm genuinely grateful and flattered that you're purchasing the books. And I also think there's 3 acts to the book. The first phase for Tribalism is Dumb was reaching political independence that are thrown off by partisanship. Phase 2 will be the passive-aggressive Christmas gift, where you give it to your dad who's super partisan, and I am here for that. Most of my career has been based on passive aggressiveness. So thank you. Or love. Either one's fine. As long as you buy the book.
I gave Los Angeles is Hideous to my stepmother, who's from Los Angeles, as a Christmas gift.
She don't like me. She don't like me.
I thought she would find it funny, and she was quite offended.
Yeah. Be offended, as our future attorney general would say.
Yeah, that'll be a good one for someone. If you have someone in your family who hates Los Angeles, buy them that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was funny, and I love Los Angeles, so I don't know. But yeah, Heaton's got some good shit on Amazon.
Break Up the Unions writes, I am in the maritime industry and news is popping out that another dock strike might be on the horizon. We all agree that monopolies are bad, and a single company that owned every container terminal on each coast would obviously and rightly be challenged under antitrust grounds. How then can a union control half the country and not fall under the same scrutiny? I'm not questioning the ability of a union to be established at each port, just the way that it can coordinate it at a national level. Similarly, if the electricians union or firefighters union struck across the whole country, how wouldn't that be considered monopolistic and need to be broken up? Antitrust is supposed to protect us from a single company from having too much power or control. How isn't the workers having too much control also a bad thing? Jen, be quiet. Heaton.
Hey, good point. I like this. I am an anti-monopoly guy. It's one of the reasons that I don't like big government, because I don't want there to be a deprivation of options. When you have a lack of options, you tend to get bad decisions coming out of it. I'll say with unions in particular, I don't have a problem with unions existing, nor do I have a problem with unions playing hard. And if that means that a union is going to go on strike and it's going to cause economic problems for me and other people in the country, I think that's fine. That's part of the bargaining process. My main thing is I want the government to be a neutral referee that enforces contract law in those regards. I don't want the government to be a cheerleader for unions or for business. I want the government to be a neutral playing field that enforces the law. And so I tend to not get really worked up about some of the union stuff. I actually don't think right to work laws are good, even though I'm very much a yay commerce guy. The reason that I'm not in favor of right to work laws is because they prohibit companies from entering agreements with unions, where a company goes, we've decided we're only going to do work with the Teamsters, and they can't do it in the right to work state. So I'm very much for groups voluntarily associating and bargaining with each other. But I very much applaud where your head's at, in that I am concerned about power structures and monopolistic power structures. And I think it's very healthy to not make a distinction between, well, this one has profit, this one doesn't, therefore it's benign. Power is always dangerous. Always be skeptical of power.
Now that Heaton has run out to the center of the pitch as a rodeo clown, I pull the gate on Jen the Bull. Go.
Honestly, I don't disagree with anything he said, except
wow, upset.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not Andrew's take. I don't disagree
Took
with.
those beta blockers for nothing.
I just think that, isn't the workers having too much control a bad thing? Let's deal with that when that's even possibly a reality here in the United States. We haven't had a minimum wage that's been raised in decades. We don't have an issue with workers having too much power. We definitely have an issue with our bosses having too much power. So, in this fantasy land you live in where the unions are all powerful, like, it's not real. So let's just...
We're saying this one union, the union that could shut down all maritime traffic.
Yeah, but these companies that these people are working for are giant companies. And so how can you have power as a worker if you're just bargaining port by port? Like, they need to have the power to shut down the industry if the industry itself is consolidating at the boss's level, to keep your wages at around the same amount, to keep your benefits at around the same thing. Like, there's a reason that when you have so few companies controlling things like this, you have to have bigger unions. And so it's a chicken and the egg situation. If every port was run individually, maybe this fantasy would work, but that's not how this works. These ports are coordinated. They're owned by the same companies. Like, you have to have big unions to counter big companies.
More Than a Hot Guy on Television writes, reducing Pete Hegseth's career to just the Fox and Friends guy is unfair. Hegseth has a bachelor's in political science from Princeton and a master's in public policy from Harvard. He served in the Minnesota National Guard and Ready Reserve for 20 years. He served at Guantanamo Bay, Baghdad, Samarra, and Afghanistan. He was awarded 2 Army Commendation Medals, the Bronze Star, the Combat Infantryman Badge. While working as a host for Fox, he still served and was with the National Guard deploying during the BLM riots in D.C. and volunteered to guard Biden's inauguration. He was also the director for Vets for Freedom and has advocated for increased accountability for the DoD and the VA, making it so veterans can use their benefits to pay for private healthcare instead of only being able to get help from VA hospitals, which leaves veterans in rural areas to have to travel sometimes hundreds of miles for basic service. My hope is that he will prioritize the welfare of the men and women who serve this country over the bottom lines of defense contractors. And at 44 years old, I'm not worried about secret hospital stays. I will just say that we got a fair amount of pushback on minimizing Hegseth from our audience. I picked the more robust version of that, but I'm going to suspect that it was probably a lot of veterans, because I have seen also on PX3 veteran pushback on, like, they like Hegseth because he has been a veteran advocate.
You know what? I'll eat a big old bowl of crow on this one. I'm glad you wrote in that email, and I stand corrected. Now, in my defense, having worked at Fox, I am, I think, justifiably skeptical of attractive idiots on television. There's many people that fit this bill. And so if somebody comes in and they're an attractive person that's a television host, I go, oh, one of them. That being said, the record that you're describing is one that is a very good one. I did not know that. I stand corrected, and I appreciate that correction from you. Thank you.
I'm not eating crow on this one, because I am happy to hear that he has a resume that military veterans and military servicemen, like, I don't know who wrote this, are happy with. Just like I said with Tulsi Gabbard being in charge of the DNI, if that equals the lives of our troops being honored in the way they should be and decisions made with their safety in mind, like, I think that's all a good thing. And I genuinely hope that Pete Hegseth does well in this position. And I hope that these qualifications make you feel comfortable as your commander, or as the, number 2 to the commander in chief. But the reason he got the job is that he's the Fox and Friends guy and has said nice things about Trump and has been a Trump supporter. Like, his resume is not that of one of the top people in the military. And so I will still call him the Fox and Friends guy in the same way I'm going to call our Secretary of Transportation the Real World guy because he was on the Real World Boston. Like, this is a president who is picking some of his people based on them saying public things that are beneficial to Trump. Matt Gaetz is probably not the best pick for Attorney General, but he has been nice to Trump. And so I do think that Pete Hegseth, had he not been on Fox and Friends, would not even be in the running for this job. And so while he does have military experience, some of it impressive, I hope he does well. That is why he got the job, and I will continue to call him the Fox and Friends guy forever.
I will not be retracting the fact that I said that he had cum gutters.
Oh my God.
And I peed next to him multiple times in the green room bathroom.
Did he have a shirt off?
Yeah, it was time to pee. And I'd be like,
Yes.
Pete, can you please leave your shirt on? I don't know why you do this. And we would do this thing we called jousting, and let's move on.
Did you cross swords?
Yeah. But that's that's just a Fox thing. It's just a standard thing. You do that with everybody.
That's the secret handshake.
Oh, please. It's a boy thing. I know you all do it.
Yeah, but me and Laura Ingraham a couple times too. So yeah.
Did you do the Piss Olympics with Laura Ingraham?
Yeah. And who's the other, like, she's now an older blonde lady. I can't remember. It's not going to work if I don't remember the name. But yeah, insert joke here.
There we go. Fuck the filibuster to shut up the gas bags rights. As a Democrat, I say fuck the filibuster and get rid of it. So much talk in politics and from Congress is because they know almost everything they talk about won't even get past the filibuster. So there's no harm in saying that you want to pass all these bullshit bills. If we got rid of the filibuster, then there's actually a path to pass these bills. People talk that they might actually be not so quick to back legislation if there's a chance that it actually might pass. Also, getting a majority to all agree on a bill is not that easy. If you can get that much support, you should probably be able to pass it. Will things that I don't agree with politically get made into law? Probably, but at least things will actually get done instead of everything shoved into spending bills at the last minute. If the people don't like the bills that they pass, they can get voted out. It is hard to hold people accountable when nothing gets done in Congress, and a majority of the things that they vote on have no actual chance of making it to the president's desk anyway.
I mean, you're not wrong. I have no emotions about the filibuster. I think it's a silly Senate rule. It's not something that's set in stone or the Constitution or anything, which is why they keep tinkering with it. It keeps getting diminished. Like, it used to be that they could only do one budget reconciliation bill per year. Now that's up to 2 and possibly more because they just keep kind of changing the definition of budget reconciliation. Like, they're just tinkering with the rules. And so I'm just like not interested in debates on the filibuster. I never have been because like it's a fantasy. It's a bullshit rule. They can do whatever they want with it. So they're either going to have it or they won't. I don't care.
I think I'm for scrapping it. The idea behind it, I like. The idea behind the filibuster is, look, if you want to make changes to government, you have to have a consensus rather than a majority. So the notion is, if we're going to change things, let's have everybody be on board to change it rather than a razor-thin majority. Broadly speaking, I'm there. I think that governance should be something that is a situation where we're all largely on board with the outcome and we're tinkering with it, as opposed to a thin majority forcing it down the throats of the rest of the country. I am there theoretically. In terms of application, however, I think we've arrived at a point where the efficacy of Congress is so bad that I am beginning to worry about how serious our country will really take parliamentary norms. I think when you get a government which is ossified and sclerotic that doesn't do anything for a really prolonged period of time, that's when the average voter starts going, well, this is all bullshit. Let's just have somebody come in and break some heads. I don't want that. I want parliamentary democracy. I want norms. And so I think this is a situation that needs to give. I don't think it's going to go away. I'll tell you why. If we're putting on, there's different lenses that we can look as the operative functions of the Republican and Democratic parties. One of those lenses is gradual change versus radical change, right? And if we're putting those glasses on, generally speaking, the Republicans want things to go slowly and the Democrats want things to go quickly. The Republicans know that on a long-term strategy, it makes sense for them to keep the filibuster because it means that there's a drag effect on change. And the Democrats, I think, would prefer it. So I think as a Democrat, I think you're absolutely right. You're going, look, there's going to be laws I don't like that are changed, but there's going to be more change in general. I think you're correct. I don't think the Republicans will do it for that reason. And I come at it from I'm all for checks and balances, but we've got too many at this point. It's getting too obtuse and unworkable, and we need something to give.
I think we might wind up getting stuff done, and we'll talk more about this in the Patreon thing, because I think there's going to be more bipartisan shit in this administration than people are assuming. There will be. In defense of W writes, quoting Andrew Heaton, I think if we're looking at the numbers, I can come up with no argument where George W. Bush is a better president than Donald Trump. The writer of this email says, I got some numbers. Afghanistan war, 200,000 dead. Iraq war, 600,000 dead. Wow, that sounds pretty bad. And it is bad. Both of those wars were massive disasters. But consider the following. The president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, which estimated by the State Department says saved 25 million lives. So if we do the math, 25 million minus 0.6 million minus 0.2 million, that is 24.2 million lives saved on net. That's more than the entire population of Florida. Imagine if Biden passed a law that literally prevented the entire population of Florida from dying of AIDS. You would certainly call him the best president of your lifetime, but for some reason, nobody does for Bush. Is it because lives in Africa are just that much less valuable? If we go by the numbers, Bush Jr. is in the running to be the best president that ever served, and he deserves your respect. Arguably, that ranking goes like this. Number 1, Bush, 25 million saved from AIDS. Number 2, Lincoln, 5 million saved from slavery. And number 3, Washington, 4 million saved from being British. Unfortunately, Trump tried to cut PEPFAR last time he was in office. Congress, America's unsung hero, prevented that. Pray to the Lord that PEPFAR survives this administration too.
I love this email. This is a fantastic email. You were approaching this logically, rationally, and with evidence. This is terrific. My hat is off to you. I will think about this. I have some emotional reticence to concede this point, but I got to say you're making a really good argument, and I will think on it, assuming that the numbers are correct and it wasn't the State Department inflating it because of Bush at the time, blah blah blah. But this is a really good argument, and I really really like where your head's at.
I don't like this at all. I feel like this is a minimization of the 200,000 dead Afghanis, the 600,000 dead Iraqis, and that's an undercount almost certainly. Yeah, it's good that people were saved from dying of AIDS, but I don't think that doing that mitigates all of the dead people from those wars, including all of our soldiers. Even our you can do the 25 million without killing all of the people in the wars, including our troops. So I don't like this funny little math and calling Bush Jr. the best president that ever served. I will always be pissed about those wars. I will always be pissed about my friends that died in those wars. And I don't actually think it matters, because they're not related, how many people were saved by the AIDS relief. Like, you could have done one without doing the other. And I will never say that Bush Jr. is the best president that ever served, ever.
I will say that this is obviously there was a little bit of a frivolity to even these serious issues. That being said, I do think that Donald Trump's George W. Bush, his reputation or action with Africa is something that is kind of undersung, and it has been undersung because it happened in the shadow of his unpopularity with those two wars specifically, continuing as they went on. We should be able to understand them in the cold light of history to be something that is particularly effective. But obviously, his legacy is going to be about the wars.
Yeah.
I am concerned with output and consequences, and I think you have to look at presidents in totality. So you look at FDR, he locked up George Takei and Japanese people in internment camps. That's horrible. You have to weigh that against how he comported himself during World War II, and I would apply that standard to any president. So I do like this line of thought. I might contest it. Like I said, I don't emotionally like it, but looking at just sheer outcome, I think, is the way to go when assessing things.
I will say that he's the best president George W. Bush was in terms of throwing a strike with a bulletproof vest on, like he did after 9/11. Did you ever see that one at the World Series? Fucking fired that shit in there. Dude, it was impressive.
I think that's the movie Dave. You're thinking of Dave.
No, I remember 9/11. In fact, I pledged to never forget. On Cable, Sinking Subs writes, While both Jen and Heaton are right as to why cable TV news is losing viewers, are exhaustion and trust. Both of you left off an important metric as to why cable TV news is losing viewers: subscribers. When Donald Trump won in 2016, cable TV had 98 million subscribers. It's estimated that there will be 68 million cable TV subscribers by the end of 2024. That's an industry that is not gaining and continues to lose people. Let me just tell you also that any industry that sheds a third of itself within 4 years is in what you would refer to as collapse, free fall collapse.
8 years, but yes.
8 years. Yeah. That is horrifying numbers. And for clarification, Comcast is putting all their cable channels up for sale. And as we mentioned at the top of the story, they have spun out all but Bravo, including Sci-Fi, USA, and MSNBC.
The only reason I care about this is that I love being able to turn on USA and it's always Law and Order 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I hope the new buyers continue to make it be the Law and Order channel.
Coming this fall to the We're Not Wrong Network, the Eat Your Veggies News Hour hosted by Bryony and shot in black and white. Andy Heat's Sports Ball Hot Takes, followed by WWE-style bare-knuckle political cage match with Justin Springer Young. Following by weather discussions for fun and profit with JB Storm Goddess. Hard-hitting detective dramedy, Spiro and the Fudge, and its spin-off, Heaton and the Monkey. And then, of course, the
Love this.
time...
I'm declaring this person vice president of the Heaton News Network. Congratulations.
And then the prime time marquee show, Horse Jokes with the Yankee Doodle Panther, the musical. Who
oh my God! You
basically
just
pitches
co-president. Good job.
2 hours.
You went from vice president to co-president in 3 seconds. Congratulations to you.
You must buy MSNBC, writes Heaton, by virtue of his fire hose of vision, gets 12 hours to mold in his tweet-clad image. Jen Briney's idealism gets 5 hours a day for her documentaries. Having said that, she has to find something to call them other than documentaries. Oh, and disaster porn is flagship programming. And Justin, dear, sweet H.L. Mencken S. Justin, 7 hours for the car crash of your dreams. I would only suggest the following upgrade. Your countdown to Milo Yiannopoulos' entrance from the penalty box reminds me of something, the WWE Royal Rumble. And that's what your 7 hours will be. The next panelist doesn't come in when somebody quits. Every 10 to 15 minutes, a new panelist joins the table. Everyone desperate to find out that one quip that makes somebody want to leave. Maybe somebody crafts a perfect offense and 5 guests leave in unison. You want this.
Sounds like hell.
I'd get a small arena. That'd be great. And they would all count down like at the Royal Rumble, like 10, 9, 8. Kanye's back. Oh God, imagine. It'd be amazing. It'd be the best. A loyal viewer writes, I would watch Jen's channel as often as I could. Heaton's every once in a while, and Justin's never.
That's right. My people.
Sure. And I am most sexually attracted to people that do charity, and I overpay my taxes all the time because it's such good bang for the buck.
I'm just saying,
Dude.
it's not me that believes I have a great way to entertain the masses. The masses have already told me. They've told me what they want. I would just simply give it to them.
You're
because
sick.
I am a benevolent, charitable man. That's
You're
what I
a
would do.
drama monster.
Maybe. Stand for something or fall for everything, writes. Said in my best Heaton impersonation voice. We get 2 of them this episode.
Nice.
The standing desk study was brought to us by back surgeons and personal trainers who lost millions when the sitting at your desk too long study from 20 years ago told us that we were going to die from sitting for too long. Those of us who have bad backs and I'm trying to keep our gut size in check are loving our standing desk. I'll take varicose veins over hobbling around like a hunchback any day. That study can suck it.
I'm glad you like your standing desk.
Yeah,
You
you're
can
allowed to
keep
like your
it.
standing desk.
Yeah.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. Mr. Andrew Heaton, what do you got cooking on the Orf?
I took a direct suggestion from my colleague, Jen Briney, and I brought on a trade expert to explicitly discuss what the president can and cannot do when it comes to trade and tariffs. We have an hour. He's a delight. He's a fan of this show. That's how he reached out to me. Big Jim, who folks will know from Discord if they're on me or Justin's Discord, and was delighted to be in contact with him, but also just really, really very substantive stuff for anybody that is like, oh, I feel strongly about trade. Can the president do that? How's that work? It's like this is what the president can do. This is what Congress can do. This is the difference between a tariff. This is the difference between a fee. At one point, I even corner him, and I'm like, then what the fuck are cigars at the airport? Why do I what? How does that goddamn work, Jim? So it's that. It's a very good nuts and bolts episode on the political orphanage.
That's amazing. I actually got a text this morning from someone asking me what Trump could do with tariffs. And I'm like, I don't know. So this is perfect.
Big Jim, who has
referral service.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that, Andrew.
Yeah. Big Jim has been a part of our family, our internet family for a long time. He is a delight, a great human being, and has a hair trigger whenever any kind of trade thing is
yes,
mentioned.
That's true.
We'll send an email saying, hey, if only you had somebody that could talk about this. So I'm very, very glad. I always feel bad whenever we have uninformed trade discussions, and I try to ask him spot questions here and again, but I'm glad that you let him run wild for an hour, because he has a lot of really good info.
Yeah, very much so.
On PX3 this week, we have a couple great guests, two hosts of a podcast, normally Carol Markowitz and Mary Catherine Ham. They are on to talk about the fall of the resistance with Joe and Mika capitulating, as well as some of the Trump picks. And we have Gabe Fleischer to talk about the coalitional element of Donald Trump's cabinet. I also explain the Matt Gaetz sex scandal, specifically the fact that the appointment of our attorney general may well revolve around this moral and legal question. Are sugar babies whores?
Wow.
Because that is at the heart of this. Also, Kimberly Leonard of Politico will be on the Friday show to talk about Florida politics, and there is a lot going on there. I've not done that interview yet, but I am very excited because the fight between Trump and DeSantis is playing very interesting role under the waves here. There's a lot of stuff happening that is big and bright and shiny, is getting a lot of coverage. Not a lot about what's happening in Florida, but that's going to be a big thing, especially for the House. Jen?
So I haven't recorded this yet, but in the next couple of days, I will be releasing an episode that really ended up being a lot about RFK Jr. because there was a healthcare roundtable. It was 4.5 hours. Which is a little different from a hearing, but basically there were healthcare people that were testifying about the safety of our food supply and like what is making up our food. And then there was another official hearing about this. So I merged the two and made an episode out of it. But RFK Jr., and this was recorded, the roundtable was in mid-September, so it's pre-election, but not that long ago. RFK Jr. was one of the people who was at the roundtable and spoke for quite a bit. And so I got to really listen to what his opinions were on the food supply, and especially now that he's been tapped for Health and Human Services Secretary. I mean, he would be in charge of the FDA and the CDC and all these different agencies. And so I learned a lot about who he is, what he thinks, and the people that he seems to be surrounding himself with. And I think it's a good news episode because I'm walking away from this kind of excited about his appointment as HHS secretary. And I understand that some people are probably rolling their eyes right now because he's been branded as a quack, but you get to hear the man for yourself and you can judge it for yourself, because when I got to hear him actually speak, I think some good can come out of this. And so if you want to hear him for yourself, check out the next Congressional
who else loved the RFK announcement?
No.
Perpetual Andrew Heaton fanboy target, Jared Polis, Democratic governor of Colorado.
He was really excited
I was
about it.
surprised to see that. And but yes, I'm getting my Jared Polis 2028 hat made right now. So
probably because his core demographic for re-election are crunchy fucking moms who live in Colorado.
I am his core demographic.
Speaks.
Jared
Crunchy
just calls
moms.
me. You know what? I've actually done, you know what? Now that I think about it, I've opened for Jared Polis before. I did stand up one time for the R Street Institute. And like I was doing stand up and he was the speaker. So we've hung out briefly. But yeah, whenever he does polling, he just calls me and goes, all right, you're the sample audience. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, that is a great way to describe the Jared Polis coalition. It's like granola moms and technocrats. And you are very much in the technocrat bucket.
Yeah. But I think RFK could have more Democratic support than we're aware of because
He was a Democrat this year?
Yeah, forever. He's Democratic royalty. He's a Kennedy, for Christ's sake. And I think some of them actually know the man. So I'm curious to see how his confirmation
the fact that
goes.
Trump is getting away with it is kind of insane. That it's like he's named 2 Democrats like into his cabinet.
And yet the Democrats are trashing them the hardest. It's just like,
They
can
spent
you
all
not
year.
Oh, that's
ruin
always how it goes, though.
All
If
year.
people reserve the brightest hatred in their heart for the traitors. That is the people that are like me but not quite like me. The religion that's almost my religion. That's where the sparks fly. You don't see a lot of like Hindu Catholic fights going on.
Yeah.
It's like you get some of your people into the Trump administration that would be on board with some of your policies, and you're going to be the one trying to trash their nominations. Like the Democrats just never fail to do the stupid thing. And they are just trashing Tulsi and RFK. And I think if they succeed in tanking those nominations, I will be upset about it.
Well, we will deal with that as it comes. Until next time, for Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young saying, we're not wrong.
And you're not either.
But you might be.
Such a dick.